Congressman Keith Self of McKinney, welcome back to Eye on Politics. Thank you so much.
Great to be here.
And so I have to start with a headline that made national news, I guess. This was this House Foreign Affairs subcommittee hearing that you chaired, and it didn't get very far. So talk to me a little bit about, you addressed the representative as Mr. McBride. This representative is a transgender woman. And so I'm wondering, why not just call the person as the honorable or representative?
First of all, we were at the very end of the hearing. We got our business done. Mr. McBride was going to be the last one to ask questions. So we had basically completed the hearing. So there's an important truth here, and that's truth. Look, Mr. McBride is free to call himself whatever he wants to call himself. As I say, I spent 25 years on active duty defending his right to do that. But I'm not required to participate in that. But again, he's free. He can call himself whatever he wants to. But the truth is, he is a man, and the House had actually settled this question. The Speaker had decided very early in this term that he would use male bathrooms. Mary Miller had introduced him on the floor of the House as Mr. McBride, and he'd said nothing. So that's why I'm kind of surprised at the fuss that happened, because I thought it had been settled in the House of Representatives by the Speaker, by the congressional record, that this is how he would be addressed. So of course, that's the way I addressed him.
And have you had conversations with the representative and the representative from Massachusetts, who I guess is the ranking member on the subcommittee? He got very upset. So have you had conversations with them, and how do you go forward?
Well, that's a great question. How do we go forward? Because this subcommittee will get our business done, because we've got a lot to do in Europe. Europe is an active place today. Now, I've not had any conversations with them because immediately we came home for district work period, but I'm sure we will. But the point that I will make to them is how do we move forward? Because if we throw a hissy fit every time the subcommittee meets, then it's going to be hard to get our business done. But we will get our business done.
So I also wanted to ask you about what I read recently is that you've had to postpone a town hall meeting. Why is that?
Well, we've been getting, I really feel for my staff. I'm getting some of the violence, the vitriol, but my staff is getting far more. Most of it are not my constituents.
Who are they?
Across the nation. There are some nodes of those you would expect, very liberal, large cities. But frankly, most of it is not in my district. My district is largely supportive, although there are people that have objected to it. Now, we did cancel the town hall, known as Coffee with Keith, which we try to do one a month, because of the threats. And there have been physical threats, and we've seen what's going on across the nation with our colleagues. So out of an abundance of caution for violence, we did postpone it. We will reschedule it because I love retail politics and I love hearing from my constituents. But the town hall just 2 weeks prior to that, there had been very little information flow. There was no violence, but there was a lot of yelling and screaming. So there was no information flow. So we're going to let things calm down, and we're going to readdress the situation and see how we move forward. But I really enjoy retail politics, going face to face with my constituents. So I think we'll try to find a way to move forward.
Now, the one that you canceled was in Greenville?
It was.
In Hunt County?
Yes.
And what about the other one which you had? That was in Collin County?
That was in Collin County, in Wiley, at the Collin College, which was a great venue. I love the college venues.
And so that you're saying that people who were there did didn't vote for you, and is that what you're saying? The people who yelled.
Yeah, they came early, filled up the seats. There were very few of my supporters who wanted to hear from me in the audience. So again, I say there was no information flow. We tried. I thought they could hear me, but the feedback I got was no information flow.
Which means what? I mean, do they have any valid points that they were trying to make as far as DOGE, as far as, some of the cuts that the Trump administration and Elon Musk have made?
Well, valid points are in the eyes of the beholder.
So let me ask you on that point, because what we're seeing now is a number of federal judges have overturned, or have blocked actually, some of the spending cuts that we've seen out of DOGE and some of the Trump agencies, the departments. What's your thought about that?
I think that Article 3 is out of bounds. First of all, our founding fathers said that Article 3, which is the judiciary, was supposed to be the weakest branch. So Article 1 is the legislature, that's Congress. Article 2 is the president, the executive of the nation. Article 3 is judiciary. Now, I've signed on to the impeachment of the judge that actually tried to turn the planes around when they were deporting gang members, Venezuelan gang members. Why? Because that is absolutely inappropriate. The judiciary is supposed to decide between ideas, positions. This judge actually interfered with an executive branch operation, an ongoing operation, airplanes in the air. That is not their role at all. And I will tell you that, frankly, the Constitution gives the Congress the ability to establish and therefore monitor all the courts, with the exception of the Supreme Court. And I will tell you that the Chief Justice was also out of line when he tried to say something about impeachment. Impeachment is entirely a congressional action. The Chief Justice has no say-so on when Congress uses impeachment or what is proper in impeachment. It's a constitutional duty of Congress and Congress alone. And
I think the Chief Justice's point was the courts can be reviewed, the Trump administration can appeal.
It's not his place to comment on impeachment. And frankly, these judges have stepped into the executive branch because they have no role in what they are doing. They have overstepped their bounds in the actual governing, the administration of the executive branch. And when people talk about the unelected officials, there's only 537 elected officials in the entire federal government. 535 of them are in Congress, Senate, and House, and 2 of them are in the executive branch. So the 2 million plus employees on the executive branch are all unelected bureaucrats.
So how is this different in your mind? Because we've seen the courts intervene because lawsuits are filed, and this happens with Democratic presidents, Republican presidents, et cetera. So are you saying what's different about this is that there was no decision based on the law? What makes this different in your mind about what this judge did in trying to block?
Because these judges did not block the unconstitutional Biden actions. Why are they all of a sudden, there have been like 125 lawsuits, 50 some of which have actually blocked President Trump's actions. Why was this not done when President Biden was using the executive authority well outside of what he should have done, overturning the same thing? He was doing the same thing that Trump is doing, and not one action. Why is that? You have to actually ask yourself, because President Biden overturned like 94 executive orders of President Trump in his first week in office or something. Nothing from these judges. These are activist liberal judges, because now you see the contrast between what they did with President Biden and what they're doing with President Trump. And the contrast is vivid.
So you're talking specifically about executive orders, not necessarily legal challenges by, let's say, the state of Texas against then President Biden on a variety of his policies.
Yes, I'm talking about presidential actions.
Okay.
And part of the presidential action under President Trump is DOGE. He's taken an Obama office that Obama started, he's renamed it, and he's using it to do what politicians at the federal level, elected officials have said for decades: fraud, waste, and abuse. And it is horrific what they are finding. And frankly, the reason that it hasn't been known before is because, and I've been in hearings with USAID, and you ask them questions and they basically try to answer as blandly as they can. DOGE was not successful until they got to the payment center, the actual payment center that cut the checks. So when they got to the payment center, they started seeing who we were cutting checks to. That's when the horrific information started coming out.
And what actions should Congress be taking? I mean, because at the end of the day, isn't this really the job of the Congress to make budget cuts?
It is, absolutely. So what we need to be doing, and this is a crucial question that you've asked, a great question. We need to be codifying the executive actions now. Because if we don't, then the next president, God forbid we get another President Biden in, he can simply overturn this and we're in the whiplash of every 4 years. So what we need to be doing today is codifying into law all of the actions, and codify all of the cuts, and codify all of the spending cuts into law, into the budget and the law concerning each of the departments.
And so are Republicans in the majority in the House and Senate doing that? Are they working on that?
Well, this is certainly the time to do it. Of course, the high hurdle is always that 60 votes in the Senate. But that's where President Trump comes in, and people say, yes, we've got a narrow majority in the House and we need 60 votes in the Senate. And I say the difference is we've got President Trump, who will actively support his own agenda, and we'll see how it goes. But that's what, you're right, that's Congress's job, to codify what's happening.
And if that happens, does that make it lawsuit proof?
Well, of course not. Because when you talk to activists on the left, they know that really one of the primary ways they get things done is through judicial activism. They depend on it. The progressive left depends on it because we often have this divided government. And in divided government, judicial activism is how the progressive left gets their ideas across and into some sort of standard. But now we have what we call the trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That's the difference. Plus we have a very strong chief executive in President Trump. That's how I think we can codify some of this.
We saw kind of a role reversal, I think, in the last couple of weeks with the passage of the CR through the end of the budget year. And so we saw House Republicans pass it, and all the Democrats, except maybe one, voted against it. Right. And then in the Senate, it was really up to the Senate Democrats, but they went along with it. Talk to me about that role reversal, because before it's usually Republicans saying, hey, if we have to shut the government down to get our point across, then so be it. And this time, it was the House Democrats ready to do that. So
Senate Democrats.
The House Democrats voted, right?
Right.
So, but yes, the Senate Democrats went along with it, with President Trump.
Right.
And so talk to me about that.
So the difference is we have President Trump. So what the CR did is it finished funding FY25, the last, 6 months of this year that we're in. So now that it's signed into law, President Trump can start impounding funds and he can ask for rescissions through Congress. So he can start cutting those funds that we now have approved, because until we had a budget, he couldn't act on it. And so now we have an approved budget. So that's why the conservatives in the House wanted to get it done. Now, the Senate Democrats were in a tough position, because if they had shut the government down, President Trump would have had a whole lot more authority to make unilateral cuts, and there would have been no judicial review, because when you're shut down, he has far more authorities. So that's the role reversal. We wanted to get it passed. Even conservatives wanted to get it passed, to get it to President Trump so he could start molding the spending to fit the national interest of the United States.
So he has more he has more authority to do that?
Well, now that he has a budget, he has the authority to do that, yes. Because there was no budget prior to that.
So let's talk about reconciliation. This is really the budget package that would allow not only House passage, but the Senate to have a simple majority as opposed to 60 votes.
Correct.
And so this is what Republicans have been trying to work on as far as tax cuts, as far as energy policy, as far as border security. So how quickly, I mean, because there's still a lot of disagreement, if I'm reading correctly, between the Senate and the House and how to get all this done. So what's the latest on this?
Well, the House has passed it, so we've asked for $2 trillion in spending cuts in exchange for $4.5 trillion to extend the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts from 2017, to extend them. In exchange, we've given, I think, $4 trillion in debt limit increase. So those are the three factors that are working here. Now, budget reconciliation, you're exactly right. It's only 50 or 51, it's 51 votes in the Senate. However, the Senate has not yet passed their budget reconciliation. So once they do, the hard work starts, because then we will have agreed, because they have to be exactly alike, the targets on spending cuts that each of the committees would get. Transportation, defense, whatever, all of the committees. And then we would have to go back to the Senate once we agreed to pass something. So there's a lot of work to be done on reconciliation. We've done 1/4 of the work here. We've passed the House resolution. Senate's got to pass theirs. Then we each have to make the cuts, actually identify the cuts that are going to be made. And then we have to come back together and agree on that. So while we want to do it quickly, and the reason we want to do it quickly, is because we want to have the positive impact on the economy prior to the midterms. That's the mistake they made in 2017. They passed it too late to have any impact on the midterms. So that's why the conservatives, the Republicans, want to get it done sooner rather than later.
And is that going to include that $4.5 trillion that you talked about in tax cuts? Is that also going to include what President Trump ran on? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security.
I understand that it will.
And you support that?
If we can get to $2 trillion in cuts, the $4 trillion in tax cuts, the overall package, absolutely.
And Democrats are concerned about cuts to Medicaid, $880 billion to Medicaid. What do you say to that?
Well, the first of all, it's been made very clear by leadership that no beneficiaries will be hurt in Medicaid. So let's lay that on the table first. Now, the point is, we want to get every able-bodied adult working again, because COVID did a tremendous amount of damage to lots of these programs. And Medicaid was one that it did one of the most damaging proposals, procedures, was that we've got able-bodied people that are still on Medicaid when they should be working. So we need to get them off of Medicaid. We need to get them into the workforce to replace the illegal immigrants that we're repatriating to their home countries. So yes, we want to get, and that's the big driver in this, is to get all able-bodied adults working again. We're missing the value of work, the dignity of work, the self-worth of work. People earning their keep instead of being on the dole with the government.
My last topic is tariffs. As you know, this has caused the markets to drop severely last week. And I'm wondering, do you agree with this? Do you agree with this notion? I mean, it's created a lot of uncertainty for businesses, especially here in Texas. Texas is the #1 exporting state by far. And so people are concerned about raising higher prices. Businesses are concerned about lower profits. So where are you on this?
Well, first of all, tariffs are meant to level the playing field. Now, most countries have a higher percentage of their GDP come out of the United States than we have come into the United States from that country. Ours is minuscule, a percentage point for most countries. I mean, it's minuscule. For some countries that we export to, a lot of their GDP comes out of the United States, so they have more skin in the game. That's how this will work. Now, what you see the tariffs doing and the idea of tariffs on countries is you're seeing tremendous amount of jobs come back to the United States, tremendous amount of investment come back to the United States, tremendous amount of manufacturing coming back to the United States, hundreds of billions of dollars for lots of large companies. That's the end goal, is to bring that back to the United States. Will there be some short-term pain? Yeah, because it's an adjustment. And frankly, a lot of this is still in the negotiating stage. I don't know how a lot of this is going to come out because President Trump uses this as a negotiating tool. You know, his first offer is probably nowhere close to where it will end up. Now, there is a lot of whiplash, and I hear about that as well. But that's the negotiation that's going on between President Trump and foreign leaders. But the goal is, we're already starting to see the goal of the tariffs, bringing jobs, bringing manufacturing, bringing investment back to the United States. So yes, it's already starting to have a positive effect. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But I think once that becomes routine, I think the markets will actually like it.
Congressman Keith Self of McKinney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
We appreciate it.
You bet.